following is a GNC podcast production. Welcome to Geek Addicts, a pop culture podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast, where every week me and Matt talk about different pop culture things, including Dragon Ball, manga, anime, gaming, all sorts of fun stuff like that. I feel like we just did this a few seconds ago.
It almost feels like that.
But you see, by the magic of podcasting, it'll be a week later.
Mm-hmm. Gotta build up that backlog. We've been out of backlog episodes since my vacation, and we gotta fix that.
Get a few in there. So yeah, it's been 10 seconds since we last talked, but I did actually remember during the last episode, I picked up some more anime over the last week.
Oh yeah,
I finally found Spy Family Season 1 Part 2, so I have that Blu-ray now.
Nice. There you go. I still need to get those at some point. Just I have so many other priorities right now. We still waiting on our federal return so we can fucking buy a new car, which we haven't had a car for a bit. So yeah, definitely need to get that done.
Yeah, I got to do my taxes this weekend.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, and get both my cars fixed because cars are just wonderful, everybody.
Yep. No kidding.
I also got I got an anime movie. I got a Suzume, the most recent Makoto Shinkai film. So I'm looking forward to watching that because I want to cover all of those on Gaming and Collecting at some point.
Yeah.
Kind of similarly to how we did the Ghibli episode a while last year.
Nice. Yeah,
oh
god.
I was gonna say, and then I got the most recent volume of Boruto, and I'm like so far behind on watching Boruto that I have to really catch up at some point.
Oh, you meant the anime. I hear volume of Boruto and I automatically go to the manga because that's the only thing I've really been following.
I think they're almost caught up on the Blu-ray, Blu-rays and DVDs for the Boruto anime because that's been done for a bit now.
The anime has?
They're on hiatus at the moment, so I'm assuming there's going to be a time skip or something.
Well, see, I'm wondering where the hiatus, because from what I understand, the anime and the manga pretty much went on hiatus about the same time. And the manga was on hiatus because it was going into the Boruto Part 2. But I can't see the anime being at the same place because the anime's been behind on the manga for a while. So I'm wondering if it just went on hiatus at an earlier part. I have no idea where the anime left off because I'm still... I watched the first few episodes of the time travel arc, and that's where I am because I skipped ahead. But
I mean, the time travel arc is very good. That was
that's why it's the only real filler thing that I'm bothering to watch.
Yeah. I'm so far behind on Boruto anime though. I have I think 5 volumes I still gotta watch, and I have not felt like watching Boruto. So
yeah, I need to catch up on the manga volumes. I need to buy the latest Spy Family, which I think comes out in a week or so.
It does, but I found it a week ago.
Yeah.
I gotta read that still.
Once I get that, I'll probably... I don't know if I want to start working on catching up on Boruto or getting the remaining Yu-Gi-Oh mangas that I still need. Because I've left that incomplete for a long time, and I really feel like I should just get the rest of it. Especially since I've only read up to what I have, and I'd like to actually finish reading the series.
Yeah.
Because the Yu-Gi-Oh manga is actually really interesting. I don't know.
I've heard.
But yeah, it's still pretty much the story of the anime, unlike the Pokemon manga, for instance, where it kind of does its own thing. The Yu-Gi-Oh manga is still pretty much the story from the anime, but well, first of all, the Shadow Realm isn't a thing. That's a total for kids dubism. That every time they talk about the Shadow Realm, what they're really talking about is death.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, in the scene where Yugi is dueling Arcana in Battle City, and they're strapped to those fucking buzz saws. No, that was actually just gonna cut off their legs.
Yes.
You know, and when they're doing like the 2-on-2 duel, like no, they were actually just gonna fall into that glass ceiling and fall to their death. Like that's the kind of shit that's in the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, and it's actually pretty cool. There's some like weird changes that the anime made too, like remember in Duelist Kingdom where they fight like the evil ghost Kaiba.
Oh yeah, he shows up randomly. I forgot about that.
Yeah, in the manga, that's really weird and different. It's like this really creepy puppeteer guy, and it's a Kaiba puppet.
That's somehow better and worse at the same time.
Yeah, it's like way creepier, but at the same time, it's like, you're not convincing me of anything, bro. You're obviously not a ghost. It's a wooden fucking puppet. You're a ventriloquist.
Yeah.
Just because you have this deck doesn't mean you're a ghost. You're still a puppet.
Yeah, unlike the anime, which is like his evil side just kind of became its own thing and then fought Yugi for a minute there.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. But yeah, that's a really fun manga to read. Anybody who gets the opportunity should definitely check it out, especially if you grew up with the series. It's fun to see the original version of that series.
That has a full set of 3-in-1s too, I believe, right?
Yeah, those are the ones I was collecting. I think I left off right when Yugi was dueling the mime guy. I think that's where I left off. But yeah, aside from that, I watched the first season of Durarara, which has kind of been a long time coming because, as I've mentioned on the first Anime Fight Club episode of GNC, I am a big fan of Bakano. It's a great series. The books are great too, but Durarara is the more well-known series by the same author, and actually takes place in the same universe, which is kind of cool. But it's a really fun series. It takes place in Japan, and it's like there's a lot of like mythology kind of references, and it kind of has a similar thing with Bakano where there's no main character. Like it's kind of like a big ensemble. As you go later on, it kind of starts to feel like some characters begin to develop into the main characters, but really like it does take its time with each character and gives each character its own kind of little story arc, which is cool. It kind of deals with gangs and stuff a lot, which makes sense because Bakano is about the mafia. But that's a really fun series. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but
I've heard about it. It's unfortunately I have too many series I have to watch right now, so it's kind of one of those things where maybe I'll get to it at some point.
I gotcha. It's been around for a bit, so I didn't know if you had seen it before. Aside from that, taking a short break from anime because I'm starting to catch up on the Marvel movies. Yes, I actually today watched for the first time. I watched Guardians of the Galaxy and Age of Ultron.
Okay.
So slowly working my way through that. I'm almost actually technically at this point I have seen all the Phase 2 movies. But I believe Ant-Man is the final Phase 2 movie, and that is one of the few Marvel movies I had seen previously, but at this point it's been like 8 or 9 years since I've seen it, so I'm due for a rewatch anyway, so still gotta watch that, and then I might take a short break, watch another anime before I jump into Phase 3.
Nah, I hear you.
Could only watch so many Marvel movies in a row before you have to take a break.
Yeah, that is for sure. But yeah, I guess now going into our topic for this episode, we're going to continue our Dragon Ball marathon that we've been we're kind of going to be going on for a little bit here in honor of Akira Toriyama.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one was a bit of a long time coming. We've been wanting to talk about the Dragon Ball movies for a long time now, and we figured the best place to start was with the original Dragon Ball films, which there are 4 of. And the best way to watch those nowadays is there is a very convenient 4-pack that you can find, which has all of them in one convenient little package.
That's pretty cheap too. Last time I looked.
Yeah, it's cheaper than the blue boxes, which is hilarious because this came out with the blue boxes.
Yeah,
it's stylized the same way and everything. But yeah, it's like 4 little films, and it's very similar in style to like the Dragon Ball like Z movie packs, which had the same thing. They had the Dragon Ball movies in their little like box sets.
Yeah.
And for this first one, we're going to be talking about the first 2 films, Curse of the Blood Rubies and Sleeping Princess in the Devil's Castle. So, how about you give? I know you probably have more backstory than I do. What's your backstory with these movies?
I hadn't seen these until like maybe. I think growing up, the only one of the original Dragon Ball movies that I had seen was the 3rd one.
Okay.
So I knew that these existed, but they were not easy to find back then. Because we'll kind of go into it a little bit, but the first of these movies was dubbed by Funimation much, much later than all the rest. And the reason for that is because I could be mistaken. I think the Ocean Group or the Pioneer distributor, they had the rights to it a lot longer than, like, longer to the point where they had already dubbed, like, all of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, and I think GT by the time they actually got to it.
So I know, because I know Harmony Gold did the original dub for this movie.
Yes.
Because you had all the lovely Zero and whatever, they changed all the other Whiskers the Wonder Cat, you know. Even though I don't think he's even in the first movie.
No, I think the Whiskers the Wonder Cat comes from Mystical Adventure.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, but so it was very interesting watching this right away and hearing the modern voice cast voicing all the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like
because even Monica Rial as Bulma, Colin Klinkenbeard as Goku, which is crazy because that they didn't step into the scene until Kai. So that means that this movie wasn't dubbed by Funimation until Kai was already a thing.
The one that stuck out to me the most was Sabat voiced Yamcha in this, but he was very much like channeling his old style of voicing Yamcha, not his current style, which sounded interesting because his voice is definitely older here, but like he was trying to do his younger sounding voice, which I found commendable because he actually did a pretty good replication of it.
Yeah, and it was definitely jarring hearing his version of Yamcha in this later dubbed movie, and then in the following movie, which is
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
The one that got me the most though was I gotta bring up the right page. So Brian Massey as Oolong, he was very much doing a Brad Jackson impression the entire movie.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Because
it's still very much like this guy's voice is very recognizable. Like you hear him and you know it's him. You're like,
it's funny because like his modern Oolong voice has a like kind of a style to it that is similar to Brad Jackson's original, but like also unique. This one, he felt like he was trying extra hard to do Brad Jackson, like his voice.
Yeah.
Which it was weird because he did a really solid job. It sounded odd the entire time.
Yeah, I definitely feel like they were trying to emulate the vibe and the sound of the Dragon Ball dub, like the OG series dub, but they didn't feel like getting all the original actors for it.
No, because like even Puar is voiced by Brianna Palencia now. I know that was not the original voice, but I mean Puar's voice is pretty much the same in both versions, so it's not really that a big of a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously though, like the other like the returners are obviously like Chris Sabat as Yamcha, and then Mike McFarland as Master Roshi.
Yeah.
We'll get to him in the second movie as well because I got things to say there as well. But
yeah, and also Sabat as Shenron
and Turtle.
Yep.
Sabat does more voices in this than anybody.
Yeah, Sabat has more roles in this than what's his name? Jeffrey Combs has in Star Trek.
Yeah. I will say it was really weird hearing Monica Rial's version of Bulma coming out of like teen Bulma. Like it just sounded really weird to me.
Yeah, it's definitely bizarre, and I think I could be mistaken, but I think this is the only occurrence of that.
I believe so because were there any flashback appearances in like Super that I don't remember or
the only one I could think of is like that one flashback scene when she's talking about when she first met Jocko, but she was like a little girl at that point. She was like 4 or 5. So
yeah, that one's not as that one doesn't like stick out as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's particularly the classic Bulma with the pink dress and the ponytail that I think of where this voice just sounds weird.
Yeah, the classic Bulma look.
Yeah, because that's just my brain is forever gonna have that in like basically as Tiffany Vollmer. So
yeah, I don't think I'll ever move past. I still prefer that voice for her, even though I will admit it does get pretty shrill at points, depending on what's going on in the scene. But that's also kind of part of Bulma's character. So
yeah. So I guess going into the movie now, this movie is interesting because it both is a retelling of the start of Dragon Ball, but it's also a completely original story. It's basic. So this movie is extremely non-canon because it completely rewrites parts of the original story.
Yeah. It pretty much is like trying to like retell the first arc of Dragon Ball, but they swap out the Pilaf gang and make it a different villain.
Yes, which is hilarious because the Pilaf gang appears later. We'll get to them though when we get to them. Probably not in this episode. It's probably
that's the third movie, I believe.
Yes, because there's also weird voice choices on that one as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this movie is interesting. Like, so the plot line here is like, aside from the Goku Bulma stuff, there is a village that's basically being harvested for these rubies that are in the soil of the village, and the king of the land is turning into this weird abomination because of it.
He looks like a bot, like a mid-level boss from Dragon Quest.
Yeah, he does.
Like literally, like this is exactly what he looks like.
And basically, this village is being attacked. So one of the families of the village has like a little daughter who looks like Suno from like the end of Dragon Ball.
Yeah, it's literally like the exact same character design.
It's like a slightly younger version of Suno.
Yeah, they call her Pansy. Is that her name in the movie?
Yes. She is very unremarkable to the plot. She kind of just appears and then takes the wish at the end, basically.
Yeah. She's pretty much there to just be like, hey, do this for me.
Yeah, she basically hijacks the wish, which to be honest, I kind of prefer over Oolong just wishing for panties. So
I don't know. the panty wish is just too classic. And I know kind of a bit of a sidetrack here, but I love that comes back up in GT.
True.
With the Shadow Dragons. Like the Shadow Dragons are all like, I'm based off of the negative energy created from this wish and that wish. And then this one's just like, I was the panty wish.
Lovely. Yeah, so essentially, aside from that, though, the majority of the plot is just kind of following original Dragon Ball to start. Like we get
Mhm.
like the Yamcha encounter, we get the road trip in Oolong's uh trailer. I forgot
Mhm.
Oolong had a trailer. Um,
Yeah, he kind of like keeps it on, keeps it a bit of a secret until it's like absolutely necessary to use it.
yeah.
Uh, I did like the the scene at the very beginning because actually my father in law was in the room when I was watching this movie, and every now and then he would just look up and just kind of like chuckle to himself because like some of the shit that they would say. Because it was the scene when Goku first meets Bulma, and she's like, "No, no, I'm a human. Don't attack me." Blah blah blah. And he's just like, "Are you sure? You don't seem like a human. Like your chest bumps are bigger than. No, it was what was it? My grandpa's chest bumps were bigger than yours."
Yeah.
And he started laughing at that scene.
Well, ironically, Bulma isn't nearly as like upfront in this version as she was in the original, because in the original she straight up flashes him.
Yep.
Um, and he's so uninterested.
Yeah, it's just like, yep, that's your butt. So what?
Yeah. Um, what'd you think of the villains? I thought they were very boring, to be honest.
Yeah, but they were pretty bare bones. I mean, they were entertaining for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I like the big tough stupid guy. I liked him just because of like the dumb little gadgets and weapons and stuff he had. Like the dude was literally flying around at like Static Shock's fucking like uh levitating disc thing. And I don't know what the hell weapon he was using, but I'm pretty sure they had something just like it in Star Trek TNG.
Oh, I just got remembered to the most what the fuck scene in this in this anime movie. The scene where Bulma falls out of the their plane gets destroyed and they're falling into the chasm,
Mm-hmm.
and Goku saves her with the power pole. And then it cuts to Goku in the river and looking up, and he just comments, "Bulma, why are you leaking?"
Yeah, he was like, it was something like, "Why are you dripping? You didn't fall in the water."
Yeah, and she just says, I forget what she says. She says something like, "Don't ever speak of this again."
Yeah, so I actually wrote in my notes, Bulma still pees herself in this scene.
I was when that happened, I was like, "Holy fuck!" I forgot Dragon Ball was such a fucking different kind of show.
So I didn't watch the later two movies. You watched all four of them.
Yes,
Um, I didn't have time to watch all of them, which is why we're only covering these first two. But I have to ask, in Path to Power, did she piss herself?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I was just wondering if they did it in that version too.
No, no. Yeah, that's the sad part. Is like Path to Power covers pretty much the same plot line, but does it much better than this movie does. But we'll save that for when we cover them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that scene got a laugh out of me just because I forgot how absurd original Dragon Ball could be at times.
Oh,
Um,
extremely. That's part of what I love about it, though. It's just so absurd and off the chain and just goofy all the time.
yeah, I was like, we just legit. I remember watching that. We're like, we just saw Bulma piss herself on the screen. That's great.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Other than that, though, like this movie had some pretty like what the hell moments as well, though. Like when the king turns into that fucking abomination at the end.
Hmm.
And he stomps on the stupid guy and just straight up kills him. And I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah, he's like completely flattened, like he was fucking steamrolled or whatever. And the like chick that he is teamed up with just kind of like picks him up as like a flattened person, and it's just like you make a pretty good doormat.
Yeah. Like he straight up gets crushed. And I was like, well, he's gone, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah, other than that, though, really nothing else major happens. There's oh, actually, I forgot about the best scene in this movie is when they go to the Kame house,
Mhm.
Kame Island, Roshi's Island, and they blow up Roshi's house, and then that's where Roshi does the Kamehameha wave.
Yeah.
Because they straight up nuke, the Kame Island.
Hmm. Yeah, like the house is like completely leveled.
Yeah, and Roshi is so pissed he like obliterates them with like he goes ripped and like obliterates them with the Kamehameha wave. And then he's like, Haha, kid, that took 40 years to master. You'll never figure it out. And then Goku figures it out, of course, in 2 seconds.
Yep, because that's just classic Goku.
It was just weird. Did Roshi seem like more frail in this movie?
Well, I think they kind of tried to portray him that way when he was first introduced, until he does the whole like super buff Kamehameha scene. And then from that point on, it's like, no, he's actually super tough and strong, but he just doesn't do much.
Yeah, it was weird. The whole thing.
I'll say the whole exchange of goods scene before his house gets blown up. It's definitely a little weird.
Oh, where they actually they change it from Bulma giving Roshi a full frontal to Bulma getting Oolong to disguise himself as her to flash him instead.
Yeah, in my notes I wrote ball for boobs, transform for panties, because that's just like there was multiple perverted exchanges going on here, because Roshi wanted to see the boobs to give him the ball, and then Oolong wouldn't transform into her until she offered her a pair of her used panties.
Japan is fucking wonderful sometimes.
So Oolong transforms into her and he starts playing with his boobs, and like you actually see the nipple through the shirt, which was really bizarre. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, I mean, you see Goku's dick like all the time, so
yeah, but I don't know. It's just weird the things that they choose to do. But
oh, we actually forgot though, when he first does the transformation, she's like this short troll thing, and he's like, everyone's a critic the first time around.
For real. Well, I just love the fucking thing where like he goes up to Roshi and he's like, are you sure seeing is all you want? He's like, we can play this little game I call Bouncy Bouncy.
Yeah, he goes so much far. It's funny how the scene is both less graphic and somehow more graphic than the original.
Yeah, no kidding. It's bizarre. For sure.
Does he go grade ape in this one, or am I thinking of a later one?
No, he doesn't in this one.
Okay, it is a later one.
Mm-hmm.
I always forget because I think it happens twice, or maybe not. I don't remember, honestly. Anything else though about? Well, yeah, I guess we should bring up the wish at the end. They get the way they get the Dragon Balls like in these movies is always interesting, because it's always like some roundabout way. Like in this one, the king had ate all of them, so they just throw the 4-star into his mouth, or 3 whatever star it was, and
whatever ball they still had.
And Shenron legit like appears out of his throat, which was great.
Yeah, like the dude like practically explodes, but then afterwards he's fine and like a human again.
Yeah, you never. Well, he still looked like a Dragon Quest mid-level boss, but
yeah, just pre-transformation Dragon Quest mid-level boss.
I do find it funny though how like Yamcha and Bulma are still extremely selfish in this one and want to go for their wishes, and then the girl like Pansy was her name, right? She just has to like basically yell out the wish like last minute, which is basically to make her land green again.
Yeah, but then like the funny thing I thought was when like the wish is granted and then like an apple falls and she hands the apple to the king guy and he's like, this is delicious. What do you call this crazy thing? And like, it's an apple. And like they're like, what of the many things you almost destroyed? And he looks down at the apple and he goes, I'm so ashamed. like the apple, that's what made you feel ashamed, not all the like pretty much slavery and fucking
the fact that he chose to eat rocks over over actual food is just hilarious to me.
Yeah. Oh, the scene at the beginning where he's like, you call this food? And the robot's just like, that's just me. Everyone calls it food.
I'm assuming his transformation was the titular curse of the Blood Rubies.
Yeah, what?
It never. There is no real other curse that I can think of in this.
Well, I haven't done enough research on it, but knowing how a lot of these things tend to go with Dragon Ball, I assume this is based on some kind of mythology.
Probably.
Because I actually discovered either today or yesterday, I don't remember which, but how everyone thinks Mr. Popo is just an extremely racist caricature.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people now that are fighting back on that.
He's actually based on a mythological figure, and that's why he looks like that. It's because he's actually it's based on the actual ancient artwork of this mythological figure, and
Yeah,
that's what it looks like. So
there's been a lot of pushback on that ever since Toriyama died, which is probably for the better because at least people are actually properly acknowledging it now.
I mean, like Staff Officer Black, there's no excuse there, but
Well, yeah, there's things
they made his name Black, so people are just calling him Black. Like, there's no excuse for that one. But Mr. Popo, that's nothing to do with any of that.
Ironically, he comes back in Path to Power, but we'll get to that when we get to Path to Power.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I guess other than that, like, what do you think of the animation?
I mean, it was pretty standard for the time.
Yeah, it didn't really feel movie-like to me. It just felt like a longer episode of Dragon Ball.
Yeah, it wasn't anything better than what we would have seen in one of the early episodes of Dragon Ball. It was pretty much standard.
Like
the choreography was pretty good.
Like a little bit of a spoiler, but to me, like, out of these 4 films, only one of them really feels like a film to me.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably guess which one that is, but we'll save that for the next episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, because for the most part, otherwise, like these animation wise, it's a little nicer than the actual show, but it still feels very much like the show.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where they play the original intro along with every episode.
Yeah. Which is still kind of nice, you know.
It is. I forgot how funky the original Dragon Ball intro was.
It's super funky, very 80s, especially when you hear the Japanese version.
Well, what's funny is the Blood Rubies used the Japanese version, I believe, but then
other way around. It was the English version was Blood Rubies, and then Sleeping Princess was the Japanese.
Oh, that's actually really funny. It's funny too because the other 2 movies also use different versions. Like we'll get to that eventually, but yeah, it's. I think overall I gave Blood Rubies a 7.
Honestly, that's a little bit generous. I'd probably give it a 6.
Yeah, well, it has to be real. So to me, like I use like Mal's like ranking format for films, and like to me, like a 5 is like it's got to be like pretty bad to get a 5 from me. Like a 6 is. Even a 6 is hard for me. So like a 7's my general standard. Like I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like it that much either.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like I'm kind of neither here nor there on it. It's nice to watch every now and then, but for me, especially with that particular one, if I'm gonna watch a retelling of the first arc of Dragon Ball, I'd rather watch Path to Power.
Exactly. Like if it wasn't for the fact that watching all 4 of these in one sitting, it was really hilarious watching Path to Power and be like, oh, we're doing it again. But at least it looks nicer.
Well, that one in particular is I believe the 10-year anniversary movie. So that one makes sense. That it would have a higher quality to it. I actually think it has a higher quality animation than any of the Z movies, the original Z movies.
It does. It's honestly like it was jarring how much better it was than every other film.
But with Curse of the Blood Rubies, it's hard for me to watch that one in general for the most part, unless I have like a good few years in between watches, because I've also watched the original series many times.
Yes.
And read the manga multiple times. So I've seen that beginning part so many times at this point that it's just, if I'm going to watch it, I'd rather just watch the series.
Yeah, especially because they don't really do anything super remarkable with it. Like the most interesting change to me is the Roshi stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, even then, that's mostly just because they they changed the comedy a little bit.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is some of the comedic points are played out a little bit differently. And it just feels so rushed. Like it's like a 45-minute film. And they
Yeah.
squeeze the events of like 12 episodes into that 45 and not even that full 45-minute runtime is committed to the retelling part.
Yeah, it was very. I think the most like this one out of all of them is the one that I could say is the best like description of the term whelmed. Like I wasn't overwhelmed and I wasn't underwhelmed. I was just whelmed.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess one other thing we can rank. I wasn't going to rank these originally until I saw the second movie and realized we should rank them. How would you rank the dub? The dub. I think this was pretty good. Overall.
Yeah, well, this was dubbed at a point where Funimation really understood what they were doing with dubbing.
Yeah.
This is at the point where they were either about to start or are already in the process of dubbing Kai. So
yes,
they understood that how important script accuracy and line delivery and stuff like that was. And at this point, all these actors had a lot of experience under their belts. So all things told, I'd say the dubbing on this is a solid 9.
Yeah, I mean, I would have massively preferred like Tiffany Vollmer and Goku's original actress,
Stephanie Nadolny.
Stephanie Nadolny. I would have massively preferred them, but I can get over it. Like I'm Monica Rial's been Bulma for so long now. I'm just used to it. So
yeah, it would be easier to kind of just wave your hand on it if they had ever gotten around to redubbing the original Dragon Ball, which I wouldn't want them to do because I love those original voices. But because if you're watching the series beginning to end, eventually that voice change does happen. Whereas like if you're going to say watch Dragon Ball and then go into Kai rather than Z, there's no transition for someone like Frieza. Yeah. It's just the one voice.
Yeah. I will say my least favorite actress in this film, not for her performance. Her performance was fine. Colleen Clickenbeard as Goku
it's just not the right vibe.
My problem with it is Kid Goku has appeared so infrequently since Z started that I'm just so used to Stephanie Nadolny's voice that like when you hear my problem with Colleen's voice isn't her performance. Her performance is fine. She just sounds a little bit too like Luffy at times, which throws me off a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was picking up on that, but a big thing for me is it just reminded me a lot of like the Kid Gohan. Because that's the voice you hear for Kid Gohan in all the video games now. When you watch Kai, that's the voice you get. And it just sounds too similar to the Kid Gohan voice. Whereas a lot of people will complain about Stephanie Nadolny's performance as Kid Gohan because her crying voice was definitely grating at the beginning parts of Z. But I will say that the way that she portrayed Kid Goku and Kid Gohan were very, very different.
Yeah.
Even though it's very clearly the same person doing the voice. It's very obviously the same person, but she plays them so differently. Like Gohan is so like grounded and Goku is so lighthearted and carefree, and you really hear that.
Yes. So yeah, like I said though, like I'll give the dubbing a solid 9. Not perfect, but not bad by any means.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely Funimation had found they hit their stride.
Now in this next film,
the
dubbing takes a bit of a hit.
The dub was almost sad how bad the dub in this one is.
Yeah.
So Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle. I think this was actually the first one that they did.
Yes, I believe so. In fact, in direct contrast to the first film, where it was one of the last ones they did, before this new wave of Dragon Ball. I believe Sleeping Princess and Devil's Castle was one of, if not the first thing that Funimation dubbed for Dragon Ball.
So this was dubbed in 98. Keep in mind the film was released in 87.
So yeah, this I believe was even before they took over Z, like doing the dubbing for Z. So this might have been during that interim period, after Ocean had finished the part that they did, but before Funimation's in-house cast picked it up.
Yes. So yeah, right off the bat, Goku's voice threw me off a lot.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest problems for me the first time I went through the original 3 movies, was everyone's voices for the most part, but especially Goku's.
Yeah. Well, especially because we're going from Colleen, it's a familiar voice, just not the best Goku voice, to this voice that was... So the actress that played Goku in this film and the Mystical Adventure film, oddly enough, was... I'm going to butcher this terribly. I apologize in advance. Silili Julian de Gadilio?
Oh, I'd have to see it written out, but I used to know how to say that name. Is it Sapphire? No, it's not something like that, though. How is it spelled?
Ceyli. Yeah, that's not going to work. Either way, looking at her credits, she was... So literally, her only anime credits are she was Goku in Mystical... Oh, apparently Mystical Adventure was the first one they dubbed.
Oh, is it?
Or that makes this even more baffling, because Mystical Adventure's dub is fine.
Yeah, that's really bizarre.
She was also Dende in Dragon Ball Z.
Huh.
The original dub. And she played little boy in Yu Yu Hakusho.
Like the little boy in the first episode?
Whoever that is, so I think.
Yeah, that's the kid Yusuke saved when he got hit by the car.
Yeah, so she had some voices. So her voice as Goku, it's not like gratingly bad. It doesn't feel like Goku at all. That's my biggest problem.
I think the sound quality of the dubbing itself was a factor of that as well, because the sound quality, like, I don't know what kind of equipment they were using or software they were using to work on it, but it just did not sound good.
Or maybe they dubbed this first, but it somehow... I don't know. I'll have to look deeper into that, because now I'm actually really confused.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know how that would have worked, because I think Harmony Gold definitely dubbed Mystical Adventure first.
Yeah.
So maybe she did the Goku voice in that version. I don't know.
No, because she's in because I watched it last night. She is definitely the voice in Mystical Adventure.
Oh.
Because Goku sounds super off, and the rest of them all sound right. So it's weird.
The English dubbing for history for Dragon Ball is extremely complicated and confusing.
Yeah. So now I will say, her performance as Goku, not my favorite, but it's not the worst. Like, I think she did a fine enough job.
Yeah.
Now, Bulma, on the other hand.
Yeah.
So, nothing against Leslie Alexander, who I guess did an okay job, but my God, that voice sounds nothing like Bulma.
For sure.
I'm curious what else she has done. She was also the aerobics instructor in the movie.
Oh, good.
So and you know the best part is, you know what the image for it is on behind the voice actors?
Is it the pig? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Those are her only... Bulma and the aerobics instructor are her only anime roles.
Well, that's interesting, because I thought that maybe it would have been, I don't know. Maybe she was trying to emulate the Ocean voice. I'm not sure.
Maybe it sounded so weird to me. Because Tiffany Vollmer, we all know, and then Monica Riel basically emulates with her own style.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Bulma in this film, by the way, was completely. She's very integral to the plot, but my God, she doesn't do anything the entire movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um.
She's
Okay.
just she's the refreshments.
Yes. Most boring fucking villain in Dragon Ball history. I'm gonna say it now.
But it's such like a goofy concept. It was Count Lucifer,
Lord Lucifer.
and he's supposed to be like a vampire, but not
he's
a
just
vampire.
he's the most lame Dracula ripoff I've ever seen.
I like the Dracula in the Dragon Ball series better.
Yeah. Um. So now getting into familiar voices, Chris Sabat voices Yamcha, and my God, it sounds nothing like Yamcha.
Yeah, which is really bizarre because
Um.
uh,
It's like the most like you can tell it's Sabat, but it like doesn't sound like you. It sounds wrong. It must have been the first time he ever voiced Yamcha or something.
yeah, that's what I think. I think this is like because I think everybody who ended up being consistent cast members for Dragon Ball, this was like their first foray into it.
Hmm. Well, I mean, give Laurie Steele some credit for doing Krillin. She was basically the same as Krillin's always been. So
Yeah, and I was saying off the air, like I've mentioned before on multiple episodes that Dragon Ball is like my nostalgia comfort show, but like for some reason I don't feel that nostalgia as strongly unless I'm hearing that Kid Krillin voice. I don't know why it just has that effect on me.
hmm. um, other returning like normal voices. Brad Jackson was Oolong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did standard Oolong. Um, PR's original voice, Monica Antoinelli. She was here. She's also the voice of Nice Launch, but
Huh.
apparently not the voice of Mean Launch.
That makes a lot of sense now that I'm thinking about it.
The only other voice I wanted to bring up, so Sabat was everybody in the last film. In this film, Mike McFarlane's pretty much everybody. Um,
Yeah,
so
he plays the vampire guy, doesn't he?
he's the vampire guy. He's that weird like red demon creature, and he is Roshi. Can we
The
talk?
lumpy demon.
Yeah. Can we talk about Roshi in this film and how his performance is? He sounds so bored the entire time.
Yeah, he's like really not bringing it at all, which is so weird
No,
because Mike McFarlane usually is so good at like hamming it up for Master Roshi.
my prediction is this was the first time he voiced Roshi and he hadn't figured out the character yet. Because my God, like the whole time he's talking, I'm like, he's reading the script. Like, I'm like, dude, show some emotion. Like,
Yeah.
please.
I mean, how much emotion can you show when you're playing a horny old man?
I know. It was like this is just like what normal like if it wasn't for like the porn magazine and watching the aerobics instructor, uh Roshi would have felt like just a normal old dude in this.
Mhm. For real.
Um yeah, so I'm going to assume it, like the dubbing in this is just so all over the place.
It's so off-putting, like throughout the whole thing. Um, and I don't know, it wasn't quite as charming as the first movie. And yeah, a dubbing is part of it, but I think just the general subject matter of the movie itself, um, and maybe that's part of the fact that like this is still a little bit of a retelling, but not really. It's kind of like making a movie out of something that was just like half an episode.
Yeah.
Because they kind of
Basic
incorporate things from the first arc and from like the Goku and Krillin training with Roshi stuff, and that's pretty much all like the stuff they use as source material. Everything else is entirely original.
yeah, so basically this movie is a weird extension of the whole plot of finding a princess for Roshi, which was originally just how they got Launch into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
And Launch is here, but she is much less important. Well, no, she just kind of exists in this movie.
Yeah, she just kind of shows up.
Because they go out on their little adventure, and it's basically the same initially as it was in the show, where Krillin's kind of a dickhead at first, and Goku is way too nice.
Mm-hmm.
But Goku's also just hilariously better at everything than Krillin is.
Yeah.
Because like I think of the scene where Krillin's riding on like the convoy of animals when they were traveling, and Goku just runs on foot past him, and he has the look on his face like, what the fuck?
For real.
So yeah, I was telling Matt off screen that this movie, I actually almost fell asleep watching it because I was that bored. So I completely missed the scene where Bulma gets kidnapped.
Well, it was. Well, see, for me, is I didn't miss that part. I missed the part where they followed after them in the first place.
Yeah,
because all of a sudden they're just in a plane on their way to go and find Goku and Krillin, and then their plane gets swarmed by like all these crazy, weird-looking demons, and like they break into the plane. It like kind of cuts to black, and then the next scene, Bulma wakes up in like this creepy bedroom, which I don't know if you noticed. The TV in that bedroom had like you know, like the like big like sound cone that you used to see with old like phonographs.
Yeah,
it had those coming out of the side, which is really bizarre.
Good old Dracula aesthetic.
Yeah, but I don't know about you, but one of the few scenes that I still find really funny is when she wakes up and she's like nose to nose with Igor, and her jaw just drops. Like,
yeah,
like. I don't know why, but that one scene I does get a chuckle out of me when I see it.
There was one scene in this film that really got. So this was the movie where I remember the Great Ape happening. Because at one point Goku sees the moon and goes Great Ape, and because this movie takes place. I mean, this is a non-canon movie. All of these are non-canon as far as I can tell, but this one takes place after the original arc, like the Pilaf like saga. So Goku's already gone Great Ape once, and during it, there's a point where he goes Great Ape, and he gets dispatched really quick. Like the Great Ape thing's honestly kind of pointless.
Yeah, it's kind of like he just transformed just to say, "Hey, look what he can do," and then they just immediately turn it back.
Yeah, because like they do like a King Kong parody where he grabs Nice Launch and he's like gonna eat her, and they're like, we have to stop him. Someone cut PR, turn into scissors so we can cut off his tail again.
Yeah, scissors.
And they just it ends just like that. And then the only laugh I got in this entire film was Goku, after realizing his tail got cut off again, is like running around going, "No, my tail, my tail!" And then 3 seconds later goes, "I don't care anymore."
Yeah.
I was like, that got a laugh out of me. I'm like, okay, that is Goku. Like they got one thing right here.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the whole thing where they're like, "Oh my god, he's transforming again," like blah blah blah, and like I found that really strange because I kind of went under the assumption that that this is supposed to be a sequel to the first movie, but he didn't transform in that movie, so that was just really weird to me.
I just kind of assumed that because the canon makes no sense. I'm assuming it was based off of the show, not the previous film.
But that's the weird thing, is that if this was the first thing they dubbed, then they wouldn't have even known about that. So that means it had to have been in the Japanese script.
Yeah, probably. I don't know, honestly.
I don't know. It's just really weird. I don't know. I mean, canon is always a weird thing with Dragon Ball, and even more so with the movies, and even more so on top of that when it comes to early dubs. So,
well, I mean, like, unlike the Dragon Ball Z films where you can somewhat finagle them into being canon if you try hard enough, there's no way to make any of these canon.
It's pretty much its own continuity.
Yeah, because there's just so many different things that completely like change everything. Like even the closest one would be like the third one, and even then that has so many things right away that make it not canon.
Yeah, that one tries to squeeze a lot into one as well in that way.
It does it much better than Blood Ruby, though, I will say.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it kind of like, well, I mean, we're not talking about that movie right now, but it does kind of like blend it in a way that makes sense, and it kind of throws its own spin on something that does happen, but does it in a way that makes sense to add in these other elements.
While also somehow getting Dr. Slump in there, which I thought was hilarious, but
yeah, right.
We'll save that for next time.
That was actually my first introduction to a rally. Was that movie?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look, that's funny. Yeah, I don't want to go any farther because I want to save that for next one. But
yeah.
God, this movie was so boring though.
Yeah, I mean, there was some parts that I did like about it. Well, first of all, the whole motivation for the villains here. They want to blow up the sun. And it turns out that the sleeping princess isn't actually a person. It's the name of a giant jewel.
Yeah.
Which they pretty much use like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid style to like power this giant cannon that they're going to use to blow up the sun.
Yes.
And that's like, it's just such a bizarre concept because it's just like, oh yeah, we're going to blow up the sun because we don't need sunlight to live.
See, that's like one of those like evil villain plots that never makes any sense. Like
that's like a Power Rangers villain plot.
See, like to me, I always think of like there was an old series on YouTube called Sonic Shorts, which were these parodies of like Sonic the Hedgehog that just made fun of the fandom. But there was one it was like Eggman blows up the Earth, and then the whole thing is like, all right, so what do you expect us to do now that you've blown up the Earth, idiots? And he's just like, I didn't think this through.
I was having a bad day, all right?
Yeah. He's like, I accomplished my goal. Shit. What do I do now?
Well, that's why the whole I'm going to destroy the world thing never made sense to me.
Yeah. Or blow up the sun. It's like think this through, buddy. Like
it's like even if you could live without sunlight, I'm pretty sure the shockwaves from the sun's destruction would still destroy the Earth.
I mean, I know like in this unit, because like in reality, blowing up the moon would fuck the planet so hard, but in Dragon Ball they do it all the time, so
at least twice.
Yeah. They bring it back and then get rid of it immediately.
Yep. Pretty much. But yeah, this movie is just strange. I do like the concept of a vampire wearing sunglasses. I found that very funny.
Yeah. I like the scene too where like Yamcha is like doing like a Star Wars disguising himself as a stormtrooper thing. But it gets fucked up because Oolong gave up halfway through.
Well, his 5-minute limit came up, but he thought he was still transformed, so he's just like, "Ooh, I'm a big scary monster," and he's just a pig.
Yeah, and then like Huar immediately screws up her transformation as well, and just kind of like gives away Yamcha, and it's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Also, Yamcha doesn't do fuck all in this film.
He really doesn't. He's kind of just there.
Which is sad because this was still somewhat relevant Yamcha. Like he hadn't been completely pathetic yet.
Yeah, this is even before the time skip before the first tournament. So even at that point, he was still like kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So
this would have been like 2 days after the events of the first movie.
Something like that.
So like he was still like relevant.
Long enough for him to get a haircut.
Oh yeah, that didn't even register in my head that he had a haircut.
Yeah, he's in his weird short hair phase.
Yeah. Yeah, this not a great movie.
I did enjoy the ending where they parody the whole. They bring Launch back to Roshi, and then she sneezes and blows them up, and then then sneezes again, and she's like, "Oh, that happens sometimes," and they're all just like shocked have shocked looks on their faces.
And I love that Roshi's just like, "You did it, boys! You brought me the sleeping princess." And it's just like, no, she's actually just a bandit, but Sure, you can trade us.
Yeah. Yeah, so this film I gave a 5. I was not impressed at all by this one.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a fair rating.
Like I
On top of the just bad dubbing, the bad sound, the bad storytelling, and everything, it's just I didn't like the aesthetic of it. It just
no,
didn't feel like Dragon Ball.
it didn't at all. Like the villain was bland as fuck.
Mhm.
Did they wish for the dragon? Did the Dragon Balls appear in this? I don't even remember.
Nope,
Oh, so that yeah, okay. So that didn't even happen this time around.
no Dragon Balls. Yeah, and I mean, I guess the most interesting thing was the Lumpy Demon. Like that was the
Yeah.
most interesting part because he had that weird like silk scarf thing that he used as like a scarf that could wrap around stuff, but also as like a stabby weapon. And he also, I don't know if you noticed, but he created like this weird like fire that he would stand on and use to fly around, which was kind of cool. Which I think is also based on mythology. Like that's the thing is a lot of this weird, bizarre stuff in Dragon Ball is actually just Japanese mythology.
Yes. Animation wise, it somehow looks worse than the first movie, which I thought was weird.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this one didn't get as much of a budget for some reason.
No, I definitely think this movie has middle child syndrome for sure.
This, I think, so spoiler ahead, but including the Dragon Ball Z movies, I think this is the worst one, in my opinion. Because I'd watch Bio Broly over this.
I mean, I wouldn't even call Bio Broly the worst of the Z movies. I honestly think Broly's Second Coming is worse than Bio Broly.
Second Coming's bad, but like I'd still watch Second Coming over this. Because at least Second Coming I can laugh at for how stupid it is. This was just boring.
And that one, Trunks pees on Broly, so I mean that at least has its
yeah, something happens.
That at least has that going for it.
I'm trying to think of even like the other Z movies, like what would be one of the more boring ones. And honest,
for Z, the only one as far as like entertainment wise that I think is comparable to this one, Tree of Might.
Yeah, but even Tree of Might has great moments though.
True, but I don't know that out of the Z movies, at least that one's the most boring to me. I don't really care for Tree of Might.
Yeah, I mean, at least like Turles was an interesting villain.
Yeah, to a degree,
because he was like an evil Goku. Because the villain in this is just a bad Dracula parody that's not even as funny as the actual Dracula parody.
Yeah, Toriyama did it better.
Yeah. That and then of course the dubbing, ranking the I'd give the dubbing in this an F, honestly.
Yeah, it's a straight fail.
I get it's one of their first, but my god, it's even like original when they took over after Ocean, like Z is more passable than this.
Easily. But I mean, not all of them are going to be winners. There's a lot of Dragon Ball movies. And
I was just shocked how bad this one was compared to even the first one and the two after it. Like, I was like, wow, this one just was bad, like in the middle for no reason.
For sure. But, they're not all going to be winners.
Yeah. Even the GT like OVA movie thing was more interesting.
Yeah, it was The Hero's Legacy or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually find a lot to enjoy about that one, which is weird because in a lot of ways it kind of emulates this movie, like with like the weird demon people they find and stuff. But obviously the animation quality is far and away better, and
the dubbing was much better too.
Yeah, because this would have been towards the end of GT. So.
Yeah. So yeah. First, it's kind of sad how the first two movies are not great. I kind of wish like we could get into the later two ones because they are much better.
Yeah,
But
well,
I think
we'll
we'll
save that
save
one for another time.
Yeah.
I will say a big, I will say a big kind of pass I can give to these movies is the reason these movies and ones like it were made at the time, whereas for these kind of like film festival kind of things that they would do in Japan at the time, and they would make these little like 40-50 minute movies, and they would have like double or triple features, and there would be one for like each of the main series that are going on right now, and they were pretty much just ways of promoting the series. So they weren't really meant to be taken extremely seriously on its own. It was more meant to just kind of to make people interested in what it's about, and then they'd go and watch the show. Like that was really the main purpose of it.
Yeah. No, it's really weird. Like, I guess it's weird looking at them now after so much more Dragon Ball content has been released since.
Yeah. It's
yeah,
definitely interesting looking at his roots.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like I think I might have watched these like back in the day, but this was like the first real time I've watched these in a very long time. So coming back to them now, I was shocked at how much I did not remember.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not much else to say though. Honestly, I'm looking forward to covering the other two more because there's just so much more to say.
Pretty much every movie that comes after these two is, for the most part, significantly better.
Yeah, there's a few there's a few kind of duds in the Z movies, but nothing is. There's nothing that put me like legitimately almost put me to sleep.
So. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so definitely longer than I thought. We managed to stretch these out a little more than I thought. Honestly, getting into like the dubbing stuff probably was the most interesting part of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. You can find Geek Addicts on all the major podcasting platforms within the GNC podcast feed. And you can also find the show on YouTube with video versions as well. Hi, guys. And with that, you can find all of our links at linktree/thebarbergames. And if you'd like, you can join us over at the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to talk all things gaming, collecting, 3D experience, Geek Addicts, and talk gaming, anime, all sorts of stuff. And with that, everybody, we will see you all later.
See ya.